Hello and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 22, Wednesday, June 19th, 2019.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back, listeners. I'm your host, Courtney, and I am joined by my co-host, Emily, for our summer series.
Hey, listeners, and hey, Courtney. It's great to be back on the podcast. Listeners, if you don't already know, we are going to take a trip to the Walt Disney World Resort this summer, but we're doing it through books and exploring the parks in a fantasy mystery series, The Kingdom Keepers by Ridley Pearson.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this. There's some kind of extended universe of the Kingdom Keepers, but we are focusing on the 7 main books within the series, and we really wanted to take the summer to do this. We figured it's a fun time. Emily's out of school. We can power through each of these books, so we're aiming to bring you 2 books per episode, and then ending with the 7th book on its own, because that one's about 600 pages. It'll be quite an undertaking, but part of the reason we wanted to do this was it was on each of our bucket lists, but also when we started this podcast, we asked a few friends and people out in social media what they wanted to see, and The Kingdom Keepers definitely came up a few times as one of our most requested books.
And we thought it'd be best to do it as a straight series since there are so many books, but also because they move so quickly and seamlessly together that we didn't want to do this as we read one and then a month or two later, after 2 other episodes, we come back to it. So we're really excited to stick with some characters and really get to know them and move through this plot together.
So on that note of plot, I will say this is your spoiler warning. We've tackled a bit of fiction with Mary Poppins, Winnie the Pooh, the Beauty and the Beast book. But since we will be continuing through, this is your spoiler alert. We will tell you as we're kind of transitioning from book 1 to book 2. I know some people have let us know that they're reading along with us, which is really cool. So if you've only read book 1, we'll let you know when to pause for book 2 to come back. But this is your fair warning, since there will be plot developments.
Yeah, and I think this is our first piece of fiction that isn't an original tale that a lot of people are already familiar with. Like Winnie the Pooh, Mary Poppins, you're kind of already very familiar with that story, so it wasn't kind of spoilers.
Yeah, our Beauty and the Beast one, it was based within the 2017 live action film, and it did, it had its own plot narratives to the side, but I'd agree, you're familiar enough with those characters that it wouldn't feel too spoilery. So you're right, new territory here.
Yes, let's talk about the author, Ridley Pearson. He is an award-winning co-author along with Dave Barry of Peter and the Starcatchers, Peter and the Shadow Thieves, Peter and the Secret of Rundoon, Peter and the Sword of Mercy, lots of different Peter books. In addition to Kingdom Keepers, Disney After Dark, Disney at Dawn, all of the above, he's also the author of young adult thrillers Steel Trap, The Challenge and Steel Trap, The Academy. He has written more than 20 best-selling crime novels, including Killer View and Killer Weekend. He was the first American to be awarded the Raymond Chandler Fulbright Fellowship in detective fiction at Oxford University.
A very accomplished author.
Yeah, I think he might be our first New York Times bestseller list.
Ooh, possibly.
Maybe as an author, or reoccurring, anyway.
I think just, reading those titles, and that's just scratching the surface of his work, is very impressive. I feel like Peter and the Starcatchers has a little Peter Pan tie in there, so maybe that's another future series for us. And I believe it was turned into a Broadway musical.
All right. So, Courtney, before we dive into this, any previous experiences with this series?
Yes, so I have read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have not, right?
No, this is brand new for me.
Well, that's exciting. So I have only read the first one, which is part of why I wanted to kind of revisit this and go through the whole series. So the first book came out around 2005, and I was in middle school at that time. I'm going to age myself here. But I was the same age as the characters in this book, which we'll get to, but they're all about 13 or 14. So I was the prime audience for this as a huge Disney fan and an avid reader. I read that, and then I think the second book comes out in 2008. I was in high school at that time. Didn't really know it had come out. And then I moved down to Florida to do the Disney College program in 2014. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 6 or 7 of these books now. So always wanted to get back to it because I really did enjoy it that first time that I read it.
Yeah, this is my first time reading the series. But like you, I think I saw it I've seen it in Barnes & Noble, but I don't think I took much note of it until I started seeing it around the different merchandise locations in Walt Disney World, particularly World of Disney.
Yeah, they're still there.
They have a big book section.
And I've actually seen a few still in like the resort gift shops. Not all 7, but we did just recently stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge for the weekend, and the book one was there. So it's like, still has a presence in the parks, which I think is great.
So I started seeing them mostly in merchandise locations, along with like the Marvel comics.
Yeah.
So I started piecing together. I was like, there's like an actual fiction world out there that Disney has published. But I've never picked them up. So this is a first for me.
Yeah,
it was exciting.
I looked at the time. So the first one was published in 2005, and book 7 was published in April 2014. So it just finished right before I showed up at Disney and started working there.
That's interesting. And we're going to talk about this with the books. We're going to end with some of this, but seeing the parks change throughout the books. Because I caught, not much of a spoiler, but in like book 1, they said Disney's MGM Studios, but then in book 2, at the very end, it says Disney's Hollywood Studios. So I was like, we're going to see some changes in here. So it's cool that these books have changed with the parks.
Book 2 was published in 2008, which is right when that Disney's Hollywood Studios name changed. So yeah, I think it'll be fun to grow with it. Since you hadn't read this series, I'd love to know what your expectations were going into this.
I definitely was expecting, knowing this was a parks themed kind of book, I was expecting a lot of going in and out of attractions, seeing some favorites. But definitely I knew I had to expect for myself as a reader that I have to remind myself what it's like to read a preteen book. It's not even necessarily, I wouldn't even know, would you call this young adult?
I would.
Okay, because I feel like sometimes young adult, we see some more mature themes, even than like with 12, 13-year-olds. But I kind of had to remind myself of like the style of writing and thinking more like a preteen.
It's more advanced than like a Magic Treehouse book.
Right. But I wouldn't call it like
Hunger Games.
Twilight or Hunger Games.
I would put it closer to that though on the scale, which is why I would put it in young adult. What would you?
Okay.
I would classify it as like young adult action adventure, maybe.
Okay.
I know it describes itself as thriller, but then when I think thriller, I think of like Girl on the Train or Gone Girl. I mean, that's my other guilty pleasure there.
So that was an expectation, like you were saying, for myself, that I kind of have to think more along what this target audience was for, just because we are 10, 12 years older than the target audience now coming back and reading this.
Absolutely. But it was fun. It's, I think part of that being for a younger audience made it an easy read, and so I really enjoyed that. It was a good way for me to kind of take a break at work and read on my lunch break, or, come home and wind down with.
I immediately started this right after, so school got out, for me last Friday. I started it a little during the last week of school because I was really winding down with just like final project presentations that like during my planning periods, I had no grading to do. I had no future lesson plans. So I was reading during school day, and it was so nice to like have 40 minutes in the day where I was like, I can just take an actual break. So I started reading it about 2 weeks ago as school was winding down. And then I finished the second book during my quote beginning of summer about a day ago.
Very nice. So right on time and right on schedule for us. Do you want me to go ahead into book 1?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so I'll read the description. I think that'll help ground us as a refresher for anyone who may have read it or anyone new. Like, this at least gives you the tone of where the book and our discussion are going. So in this fantastical thriller, 5 young teens, tapped as models for theme park guides, find themselves pitted against Disney villains and witches that threaten both the future of Walt Disney World and the stability of the world outside its walls. Using a cutting-edge technology called DHI, which stands for both Disney Host Interactive and Daylight Hologram Imaging, Finn Whitman, an Orlando teen, and 4 other kids are transformed into hologram projections that guide guests through the park. The new technology turns out, however, to have an unexpected effect that is both thrilling and scary. Soon, Finn finds himself transported in his DHI form into the Magic Kingdom at night. Is it real? Is he dreaming? Finn's confusion only increases when he encounters Wayne, an elderly Imagineer who tells him that the park is in grave danger. Led by the scheming witch Maleficent, a mysterious group of characters called the Overtakers is plotting to destroy Disney's beloved realm and maybe more. This gripping high-tech tale will thrill every kid who has ever dreamed of sneaking into Walt Disney World after hours and wondered what happens at night when the park is closed.
First book was really cool. It's so imaginative.
Yeah, I really liked this idea of like technology. You know, that's not something that is used in the park. It was created just for this book. So what did you think of that idea of DHI technology?
I thought it was interesting, and I feel like we kind of see this happening, not necessarily with holograms, but with more advanced audio animatronics, and like in Monsters Inc. 4, where like you have technology that can in real time interact with guests. But I liked how they took it an extra step further. So these holograms, like, they wander around the parks, and these kids are mini celebrities. And like they talk throughout the books how they have this like fan base. Our main characters can't go into the park without Disney knowing, because it's kind of the same thing as character integrity. You can't have the real Finn walking around enjoying the park, but then tour guide Finn giving a tour. It like just looks weird, and it destroys the magic effect. So I thought that was kind of cool, though. Do you think, let's say the technology existed, could you see that in the park?
You know, I think it would be cool. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like VIP tour guides, the way it started to get described a little later. Like they were guiding individual people around versus just being like a source of information for everyone. I think it would be really fun. I don't know if I'd want it to be kids like described here, because you know we kind of see some of the repercussions of that, but it would be cool to maybe have like a Disney celebrity who's often tied to it, like Julie Andrews or Tom Hanks or some, you know, like Disney legends, or even just a character, like make a holographic Belle or Aurora.
Yeah, and I think I could see this more, not necessarily as tour guides that wander around the parks, because that's a lot of really sophisticated technology that I don't even know. Disney is usually at the forefront of technological advancements, but I don't even know if we're close to that, where a hologram can go all over the park through lots of different things, but having them at different places, so a little more stationary, or like they stay within like this land kind of a thing,
okay,
I think would be more attainable.
Yeah.
And like, but then everyone can use them. You can go up and interact, like, where are these things? But at the same time, I don't want to take away from the actual CM experience, cast member experience of interacting with people.
Because when I did my college program at Space Mountain, I really enjoyed like the greeter role out front to be able to address guest questions. And, you know, it might not relate directly to Space Mountain, but give them my recommendations of a great place to grab lunch in the park.
Yeah, and then also that connection of like they see on your name badge like where you're from and or what college you went to, and then you can connect. So like the holograms would be really cool technology. I think that could be something, like you said, with characters would be really interesting, or celebrities, something that the park can't give you on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I wouldn't want to erase the cast member. So it would be a balance.
I want to jump on that character note that you said, though, because I think we should explain that that's basically why they're created. So the theory here is that after the parks are closed, the characters come to life. So Maleficent's out there. Within the book, there were animatronics, essentially, from Pirates of the Caribbean, but they exit the ride at night and wreak havoc, and the the cast members, like security or Imagineers, they can't see them, but they know that these things are happening. So the reason they create the DHIs is to kind of treat them as a character to see if they can see the characters and confront them.
Right. So this whole thing that's happening, like the description says, Wayne, the Imagineer, they see these things happening because of the power of believing, kind of taking a Figment spin here, that because we buy into these stories and children particularly believe in all these stories, they're seeing these attractions, the magic of believing is making these characters and these attractions come to life, because if we believe enough that they are real, then they are real. And it's been fine for the, quote, good characters like Winnie the Pooh and the princesses, but then you have your villain characters that are like, well, you know, they're villains, so they're going to use their villain powers and wreak havoc and do things. So, like you said, that's why these kids were told they're becoming these hosts, because it's a new thing in the park just to help the guest experience, but it's to help bridge that they are now, quote, attractions, so they can be part of figuring out what's going on and stopping. The villains as a whole are called Overtakers because they're trying to overtake the park. So that's our plot of how these characters get here and what their purpose is.
And there are 5 of them. Do you want to go through them?
Sure. So we have Finn. Book 1 is told completely through Finn's perspective. So he's our main character. He's, quote, the leader. We have Charlene, who is... We have 2 females in this group, Charlene and Willa. So Charlene is the first female character. She is supposed to be the cheerleader type. Mm-hmm. We really play on like classic school stereotypes in this book, which I think is age appropriate because that's how we, even as students or in your workplace, how you can like imagine personalities. So she's the athletic cheerleader, very pretty. There's a couple funny moments throughout both books where they all kind of like get taken aback by Charlene. They're like, oh, okay. And like the boys are shy around her. Willa, I had a hard time describing Willa. She's a animal lover. She seems a little more tomboyish, outgoing.
Yeah, maybe like a bit of a bookworm, kind of down to earth. Like I would say she's Charlene's foil in that regard.
Yes. Yeah, Charlene also, she kind of grows. We see a big growth in Charlene, I think, between book 1 and book 2. Like, particularly in book 1, Charlene is very like, I don't want to be here. Why are we doing this? Questions everything that's happening. Doesn't want to be a part of it, but like kind of gets dragged because she also doesn't want to not. You
know what I think of? You know, Scooby-Doo. Like, I feel like Charlene is Daphne and Willa is Velma. Is Velma.
Oh, Velma. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wilma is Flintstone.
we've combined it together.
I see that. I can totally see that.
And our other 2?
All right, so Maybeck, he is the athlete, but also, I guess the athlete. He's really sarcastic. He's witty.
I feel like he's also the conscience in a way, or like, I can't think of the right word, but he's often the first one to like express doubt or like keep everyone in check.
Yeah.
Like the devil's advocate.
Yeah, he's definitely a devil's advocate. And I really like the friendship between Finn and Maybeck because at first they kind of annoy each other a lot. But then you see them growing on each other where like they're just sarcastic and they know that's how just each other is. And so they just kind of make fun of each other. Like, really, Maybeck, you're calling me out on this again? He goes, well, you know. And but they accept it and they're okay with it. And then you have Philby, he is the brains of everything. He's the tech guru. He studies up on everything. So he's the in and out know-how. He's the one that studies the parks when they're trying to like figure out where things are or avoid security. He's the maps and he's the tech.
Yeah, and I'd like to commend how diverse this group of characters are, especially like in their descriptions. Philby is described as having like red hair. Charlene is your blonde, you said, the stereotypical cheerleader, and Finn brown-haired. But Willis described as Native American and maybe like a mix of some other cultures, and Maybeck is African American. So I think it's nice to see like a well-rounded group represented there.
Yeah. So Courtney, as we're thinking about these characters, if you were 12, 13, thinking back to our middle school, early high school age, which character do you think you're most like? Who do you identify with? I
have to say probably Willa and more because I think of her as Velma. Like, I was quieter and more reserved. I'm really hoping we start to see some more growth from her in the later books, because she's not one that we've heard too much from in these two books.
Yeah.
Like, she is more of taking a back seat. But I'd say, based on the way she's described, I see more of myself in her. What about you?
I was a little torn between a little bit of Willa and Philby for, my geeky side. But I could also kind of be a little snarky.
Okay.
So sometimes I saw myself as a bit of a Maybeck, not so much of a doubter as he is.
Yeah.
But like saying the thing that maybe someone doesn't want to hear, but everyone's thinking it. So sometimes I identify with Maybeck. I think I lean more towards, like you, the Willa, maybe a little bit of Philby. But I think more as I'm growing up, I think I'm a little bit more of a Maybeck than I realize.
We are just not Charlene's. We are not athletic.
No. You're not Charlene's. I'd like to think we're all noble Finns.
Yeah, he definitely is, it's really Finn's story, especially book one, as you said, told from his point of view. So clear leadership qualities there. But I think what keeps him well-balanced and humble is that, we're, as the readers, seeing that he's supposed to be the leader, but sometimes he has his own doubts. And I think that's really, on par for someone of that age.
And also in some ways, I think he's also a little bit more mature, because he also recognizes the strength of his friends and doesn't try to try to do those things himself. Like, he truly expresses what leadership should be, which is learning how to keep the team moving together. And he does that.
And what's interesting is they all go to different schools. So when they're meeting up in the parks after dark, that's really the first time they're all coming together. And I was wondering, if you could cross over into the parks after dark, what would you want to do?
Oh, goodness, there's so many things. I really think I'd want to explore the castle. Like, I just would probably spend a lot of my time on Main Street with the lights on and towards the hub in the castle, just because it's just so beautiful at night. But I would love to get to the top of the castle, like Tinkerbell perspective.
Yes.
And, like, look out over the park with all the lights on at night with no one in it. And then probably also Tinkerbell fly from the castle.
Yeah, that would be really fun. I kind of had that experience on my college program. So when you work at Disney, you wear your costume, or what more people would think of as a uniform. And so since I worked in Tomorrowland, I can't wear that costume on Main Street or Frontierland. That's why there's the whole utilidor system, which is pretty well known and well discussed in this book, which we'll get to. But one night I was taking Lost and Found from Space Mountain to City Hall, and they said that the park was clear of guests, which means, like, you could be on stage in your costume. So normally I would go back to Space Mountain through the utilidor, but I totally walked on Main Street in my costume because nobody was around, and I was like, this is awesome! I've walked Main Street at night as a guest plenty of times, but to, like, be there in my costume felt cool.
No, what else could be fun? Taking a Main Street vehicle and just driving all over the park.
Yes. I'm joining you on that if I cross over.
Well, obviously, I can't do this without you. I'm
no,
not
I
doing
know.
this alone.
We're crossing over together. I think it would just be fun to ride attractions without getting off, like just staying on and like going a few times until you're done. Let's just keep going on Big Thunder.
Just go,
yeah.
Space Mountain. Big Thunder at night is amazing.
Mm-hmm. What I
that
should
would be cool.
mention, though, that experience is kind of there, and I feel like I'm probably going to sound like a corporate troll, like giving a plug, but there is an event called Disney After Hours now, which is at 3 of the 4 parks. It's available at Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, and Magic Kingdom. It's a hard-ticketed event, which means it's an extra price. Like, maybe you'd buy that ticket in lieu of buying a day ticket, kind of similar to the Halloween and Christmas parties, but the major attractions are open. It's a limited capacity, so it almost does feel like the park is empty. So I feel like that'd be a fun way to, like, almost get that Kingdom Keepers experience. Oh, and especially now there's a villain one. I totally forgot until just now. There's a villains one at Magic Kingdom, and like Maleficent is there. So basically, this is Kingdom Keepers, the party.
Amazing. I would love to do one of those. That sounds really fun. Let's get more into the plot. Let's really dissect. So again, spoiler alerts. We haven't really given much away beyond the description on the back of the book. So if you have read with us and want to continue, stick with us. If you are still reading, maybe take a pause. But let's go over this. So we've talked about why the DHIs, our 5 characters, are part of this. But overall, Courtney, give us a lowdown. What are these Overtakers trying to do?
Yeah, so the Overtakers are harnessing power. They say within the book that like a hurricane recently crossed over Orlando, which as an Orlando resident, that does happen. Yeah, we've had a few in the past few years. But as it starts to go over the Magic Kingdom, like all the power is sucked out of it. And Wayne and the Imagineers speculate that the Overtakers are harnessing this power because they want to gain control of the park, the cast members, its guests, and possibly beyond the berm of the park and like into Orlando or the rest of the world.
So Wayne is our Imagineer who has the know-how and he understands why this is happening. So an interesting part of this plot is that Walt Disney knew this could happen. So he's built into his parks kind of safeties to help control this, but he has this riddle that he tells Wayne. And Wayne in this book is one of the few last living Imagineers who personally knew Walt Disney. And it's called the Stonecutter's Quill Riddle. And supposedly Walt Disney left this as a means that should this happen, here's a way to defeat the Overtakers and make sure that the park remains in the light with the good characters and good magic instead of bad.
Yeah, so that's what the Kingdom Keepers are tasked with, helping Wayne solve that riddle because he thinks that'll be the key to defeating the Overtakers. So in order to solve that riddle, they go through different attractions out in the Magic Kingdom all at night to kind of see what clues are out there. And this was definitely one of my favorite parts of the book, were these scenes throughout, attractions that are probably very familiar to anyone who has been a guest of the Magic Kingdom, but really seeing them in a whole different light.
Yeah, so the Stonecutter's Quill Riddle is about a man who's a stonecutter, but then he wishes he was the sun. And then realizing that the sun is not all powerful, he wishes he were a cloud because it has more power. And then after the cloud was the wind,
a mountain.
And then a mountain. And then realizing that the stonecutter has a lot of power already. So it's one of those, be careful what you wish for, but also in turn know your own worth. But what the kids figure out is that the riddle is talking about elements, sun, clouds, wind. So that's what takes them to all these different attractions. So we start in Small World because that is where the largest sun is. And there's just one moon and one golden sun. So the sun's everywhere throughout that attraction. So we start in Small World, and Small World is creepy.
Definitely one of the most memorable chapters within this book. As I said, I read it back in 2005. I think I got it from the library, and then my dad was like, oh, that sounds cool, I'll read it. And we were both like, oh my god, that Small World chapter. And then like still, when I'm on Small World, over 10 years later, I still think of this chapter. So basically,
this is going to be a new thing for me. Like Small World now has a totally different
look at
meaning.
Small World the same. Basically, the dolls come to life and they're creepy
and attack you.
And they gnaw at your ankles. So it's a dark world after all.
Yeah, and they figure out the way to defeat the dolls is that smiling. A smile means friendship, so they just like start creepily smiling at these dolls. It's like a horror film.
It really is.
And you're just like, oh my god. And then the dolls go away because the dolls are actually good characters. They think the kids are Overtakers, so that's why they're attacking them. Or at least that's the perspective I got out of it.
I could see that, or that the Overtakers have control over them, and then they need that friendship to revert back to like the state that they're supposed to be in.
Right. So at first, we have no luck in Small World. They don't see any clues. They're looking at every sun that they pass, and they don't see anything. And then it kind of comes out later, their friend Amanda, who we're going to get to. Amanda is special. Says something to Finn like, you got to look through life for a whole new perspective, like new pair of glasses. And it hits him that he's like, Walt Disney was all about perspectives. And Walt Disney was one of the forefronts of 3D technology. So now the kids are going through all of these attractions with 3D glasses. And that's where we start to get our clues. And they start finding random letters. So in Small World, they find some letters. And then next with wind... No, clouds were next.
Yes. So they go to Splash Mountain because there's some clouds and even those indoor scenes. But it seems like you're outdoors with the different show scenes within the ride, and so Finn and Philby head there, and while they're there, the ride, there's no creepy dolls, but the ride starts running, like the logs are coming at them, and that's a little scary.
Right, and they're just wading through the water.
Yes.
That'd be interesting to go through Splash Mountain walking through the water path.
Oh, yeah. Or, like, on a lazy river, on, like, a little float
oh
or
gosh, that'd be fun.
I always think about that.
Fun.
This is, like, not Magic Kingdom, but I think of Living with the Land at Epcot. I'm like, that would be an amazing lazy river. Anyway, these attractions things really get your brain running about other attractions after hours. The next one, though, is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we have
Winnie the Pooh. So Charlene and Willa.
I know. I ruined it for you.
Wilma or Velma? No, Willa. They go to Winnie the Pooh because the blustery day, the wind, and there's that one scene in the ride where it feels like you're being swayed back and forth. So they figure they need to find some clues in there. They do find the clues, but not before the rain came down.
Mm-hmm.
Torrential downpour that they are almost drowning in the ride. Like the doors that open from room to room aren't opening. So all the water is coming through, and they use some ingenious skills and they get out. And I just always find it funny after all of these weird things happen. They did this during the day.
Yes.
They were guessing. Guests were just looking at them weird, like, what did you do? You broke the ride. And I'm just like, I couldn't imagine like having to explain that, like the cast member on the other side that's just like, what
why
the
are
heck
you
just
all
happened?
wet?
Right. But they do get their clue.
Yes, and then Thunder Mountain. So that is the stone. And again, we're back at nighttime where things can start to come alive. And this is a detail you might have overlooked riding the ride, but there is a large dinosaur skeleton kind of right at the finale of the ride as you pass the geysers. Well, that comes to life and starts chasing two of the Kingdom Keepers.
Right, so that's the bulk of the book, is us going in and out of these different attractions and them trying to find these clues. And the clues are a bunch of letters, which is an anagram, and then they're trying to figure out what that means. But we also go into a couple other attractions. Before we unfurl the anagram and what that means, we go to your favorite. We do go to Space Mountain.
Yes, so at one point, they, these DHIs cross over at night when they're asleep. So, whatever you wear to bed is what you show up in the park. So Finn starts dressing in, like, full normal clothes to go to sleep in. But at one point, Maybeck splits off by himself and doesn't make it back. So in the real world, he's asleep and can't be woken up. And that's because his DHI is trapped still in the park. So they try to find him during the day to save him, and he is at Space Mountain inside the ride. So that was really fun for me to read. We'll get a little more into like some of the backstage elements, but I will say this part felt very accurate, having walked that track myself working there.
So Courtney, given all these attractions we went through, did they fit for you for the riddle, or did you have other ones in mind when you heard wind, clouds, rocks?
I really think those are, which makes me think like Ridley Pearson like really planned this out. Like I'd love to see his outlining process for everything. Was there something that jumped out to you?
For clouds, I didn't quite go for Splash Mountain. I was thinking more Peter Pan. But the kids also talked about that too. But I thought more Peter Pan for clouds.
I could see that because you're flying like above at one point. This is an attraction that was not around at the time, but there used to be where Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin was the Delta Dream Flight, or if you had Wings, the airplane themed ride, attraction, and that definitely had some clouds. But yeah, Peter Pan's a good one. Maybe because they were already like right across from it in Small World. Well, Splash and Thunder Mountain are next to each other. I don't know.
Yeah, so Splash Mountain definitely fits. The more they explored it and talked about it, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. But I think it was mostly for clouds. That was the one that was like, oh, Peter Pan.
Well, I guess how would they get through Peter Pan as DHIs? Like, at least, Splash, they can walk, or they can wade through the water like they did in Thunder Mountain. They walk the track, whereas it'd be a little hard to maneuver through Peter Pan.
Yeah, they'd have to actually turn it on or lower themselves down and somehow walk through all those little sets.
And I guess, too, if you think about it, they went to Winnie the Pooh as well, so that would be 3 attractions in Fantasyland.
So maybe it was a
balance.
writing decision just to pull us around the parks. But the clouds do fit. There are clouds in Splash Mountain. And Splash Mountain is definitely more menacing of, like, they get pushed, they go down the chute.
Yeah.
They go down the waterfall. So definitely more fitting.
Did reading these different descriptions or, like, perspectives on the ride make you want to revisit an attraction and maybe see it through different eyes?
I really do need to revisit Splash Mountain. Unfortunately, it's one of my favorites, but I don't ride it every time because I don't like being wet. And so it depends on the time of year that I'm visiting Walt Disney World when I do that Splash Mountain. So, like, they talked about clouds, and I was like, I vaguely remember clouds, but now I kind of want to look for that. Like, where would they
that?
Yeah, like, where did they see that clue? And then Winnie the Pooh. They don't ride that one every time either. Whereas, like, Small World,
you're like, I'm not going anywhere near Small World.
Well, now I'm not anymore. It's ruined for me. Small World's always had a special place in my heart because
now it's dark.
I rode Small World so many times as a kid because I am small. For listeners who don't know, I am 5 feet tall, and that is it. So it took me a while to, like, become tall enough to ride things. So when I was little, like, I rode Small World all the time because I thought it was great and I could ride it and I absolutely loved it. And now I'm like, oh, one of my favorite childhood memories is now, like, torn.
I feel that struggle. I am 5'2" and was very short as a kid. And I remember I was tall enough to ride. We went annually. I was tall enough to ride Space Mountain at 8 years old. But Space Mountain's height requirement is like 44 inches. And I remember being the person who had to check heights. And I was like, how was I this small as an 8-year-old? Like, these are 5-year-olds. I was a little behind.
Yeah. But I think for me, it would be Splash Mountain and Winnie the Pooh are not the ones that I always ride every time I go. So there are ones that maybe I don't have as vivid memories. Because I go maybe every other trip or so. Whereas Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, Small World, I tend to ride them every time.
That's fun.
What about you?
Well, I feel like I live here, so I do them a lot. I think, and especially I was revisiting this book itself. So like I said, I already had those things in mind, like having visited since reading the book. So I feel like as we move through the other books and start branching out into other parks and places, that I'll really want to revisit them specifically for this book for that reason.
I think I'd have to agree with that. Magic Kingdom is definitely the park I know the best. So there will be some other things. But moving forward, so we have these letters, and it spells out my first pen, and my being Walt. So this takes us to one of our other favorite attractions, all the way over in this book, Disney's MGM Studios.
Yes.
What did you think of going into One Man's Dream?
Loved it. Unfortunately, that exhibit is One Man's Dream is there in a sense that some of the things referenced are. It's now called Walt Disney Presents, but what they really need to get to is what was a display of Walt's office, which has now been relocated to its original place at the studio in Burbank, but it used to be behind a glass panel, and that was just so fun to look at.
Yeah, that was a good memory.
So that's where they need to venture to find this pen, and also some important plans. For those that don't know, Walt never lived to see Walt Disney World, though he was, integrally involved in the planning for it. So this kind of it suggests that he knew that this was going to happen. So he set forth plans and put stopgaps in place to prevent it. And that's why Wayne is so important, having known him and is one of the few remaining Imagineers to have worked with him.
Right. And we need these plans because since Walt did pass away, he didn't tell Wayne everything, or all the other Imagineers everything. So they need the plans. And this pen also has like magical powers. Yeah. So around this time is when we finally come face to face with Maleficent. We see her lurking throughout the parks, but the Mistress of All Evil doesn't clash directly with the characters until they're actively trying to get these plans. So interesting things about Maleficent. This was kind of the idea of cold.
Yeah.
Which, makes sense, but that's not something I would have necessarily gotten from her character in the movies.
Right. It's not as it's essential in this book. Like, she has to be somewhere that's cold, or like cold air. You can sense she's around, but that doesn't come from her story within Sleeping Beauty.
Right, so that was an interesting point to add into this book, but you're right, it becomes integral to a lot of the plot of how these kids approach her
and know
when they
that she's coming
her.
or is nearby. But she is such a great villain, so I like that she has such a central role in this part. And the book really kind of culminates at a Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, where the kids are able to attend because they're dressed up in costume. And they come face to face with her with that pen.
Right, and this pen kind of like blocks her powers in some way and like weakens her. And what's funny, I thought it was funny that they didn't know which pen was the pen.
It's like a handful of pens.
Like Finn takes all of the pens. So I just like see a child like just throwing a lot of big pens at her.
Right, so the pens are all on Walt's desk, and he's like, I don't have time, so he just grabs all the pens and carries them.
And then at one point he's like, I'll throw these at her, and like one of them works, but it takes them a bit to figure out which one. But we also have another character, Jezebel, who is with Maleficent, and I think we need to talk about Amanda and Jezebel for a second.
Yes.
They're very important characters.
Amanda is not a DHI, but she goes to Finn's school and kind of befriends him, which I also thought you could tell you're reading a younger novel, because it was all like, ooh, like, boys and girls aren't supposed to be friends, but Finn's like, but I kind of want to be her friend. Like, there's a lot of little nuances there about boy and girl relationships, and like, oh, they're paying attention to each other.
Or he catches himself blushing and he doesn't understand why.
Like, oh, you'll understand. So she's there to assist him. She doesn't get to cross over with him, but really helps him through the parks, though there seems to be some tension between her and this mysterious character, Jez, who I would describe kind of as Maleficent's, like, henchwoman.
Right. So throughout the whole book, Jez and Amanda, they exist, but, like, you have a lot of suspicions because we don't know a lot about them. Like, why is it Amanda so knowledgeable about the parks? And she can go whenever she wants, and her parents never seem to be around. And she kind of believes Finn, even though all these impossible things are happening to him. She's like, oh, no, I totally believe you. And he's like, why would you? So she's interesting, and we learn even more about her in the second book. But it turns out she is connected with Jezebel. They're sisters.
Yes.
And Jezebel has been put under Maleficent's spell, but we don't learn why until book 2.
Yeah, and in the climax, so we had said at the Halloween party, that's when they really start to have like that tension building with Maleficent and realize the pen has powers, but they have to return to actually defeat her. And in that moment, in kind of like a scuffle, somehow Finn is able to free Jez from the spell. She turns into a normal girl named Jess, and that's when it's revealed that she's Amanda's sister, and Amanda is very grateful to have her sister back.
And then Finn has a lot more trust now that he understands, oh, this is why you know so much, because you've been through this already, and you know who Maleficent is. And then they catch Maleficent, oddly, in a giant net. I was hoping for more of a Phantasmic kind of a thing, but I feel like that's coming later because they keep referencing Phantasmic.
Yeah, we haven't.
So maybe we'll get some
studios yet. But it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. You know, like that's neatly tied up that they caught Maleficent, but it just kind of ends with Wayne pushing the button to send them back to their homes, and like I was left wanting more as a kid in 2005. But now we have more. Do you want to give us the description for book 2?
Yeah, so book 1 is definitely a lot of exposition. It's exciting exposition, but we need book 1 to set up for us the larger plot, because book 2 is really going to reveal to us the bigger picture of what the Overtakers are trying to do. So, about the book. So here's the back of the book. It's supposed to be a happy day at the Magic Kingdom, the return of the teenaged holographic host. But things go very wrong when a sudden lightning storm disrupts the celebration and Amanda's mysterious sister Jess disappears. The only clue is the sighting of a wild monkey in the Magic Kingdom during the storm. The mystery deepens as Finn is contacted by Wayne, an old man he hasn't heard from in months. Wayne tells Finn that there's trouble in the animal kingdom. The evil Overtakers have gained control of one of the computer servers that will be used to operate daylight holographic imaging there. That means that if any of the holographic hosts fall asleep, they will go into comas permanently. Filled with action and brimming with the same meticulous detail as the Kingdom Keepers' Disney After Dark, the second book in the series, Disney at Dawn, is the result of hands-on research behind the scenes at Disney's Animal Kingdom Park. The wild rides have only just begun. The clock is ticking. How long can the teens keep themselves awake in their quest to find their friend, and what happens if they fail?
That last line you just said was what was most interesting to me, because it's kind of the opposite scenario. In the first book, they keep falling asleep and showing up at Magic Kingdom, but in this one, it's like we literally can't fall asleep, so the action is very concentrated in this one.
Yes, so how this starts off is that after they catch Maleficent, she's imprisoned in Pirates of the Caribbean in the jail cells. Very fitting. But she obviously has time to think and to plan, like any good villain who has a prison break. So it turns out that they're at this parade because they get to be part of the parade as the DHI hosts, and they're noticing these weird things are happening along the parade route, like the sudden storm is coming through, they see the monkeys or whatever, but Amanda has some info, and she's trying to tell them don't go to the castle, but of course what do they do is they go to the castle, and it turns out Maleficent has been imprisoned there. They keep moving her around because she kept plotting with people at different attractions on how to escape, so they keep moving her from place to place so that she always has to start from scratch. And kind of wrong place at the wrong time, Finn thinks he's doing the right thing, going to the castle and to their secret apartment that they've had in book 1, but turns out Maleficent's been hiding there, and he kind of ends up aiding in her escape without realizing it. And I didn't think about this, but she does what I would do after dark. She goes down the Tinkerbell flying trail from the top of the castle to escape, and that's exactly what I would do.
Who here has not wanted to follow Tinkerbell's path of flight?
I know, spreading pixie dust across the Magic Kingdom, but she's not really spreading pixie dust. She goes full on Batwoman.
Spread some fire. But of course, all of the guests are like, "Wow, that was such a good show!" They think it's
something between
totally part
these
of the
two
Disney
books so
show.
far is that the guests are not the smartest. They're just it's part of the show.
Disney has such a high standard for entertainment. If I saw Maleficent, I'd think it was part of it. I don't know that I'd question it. It's just a nice magical touch.
Maybe because of how we're seeing it through Finn's perspective, it sounds more like, really? You people are believing this right now? But yeah, maybe if you were more of we get to read this happening over pages and pages, whereas a bystander literally sees it for 2 seconds.
Yeah, and this book does pick up just fairly shortly after, which I was curious what was going to happen because, like I said, the first one was published in 2005, and then this comes out 3 years later in 2008. So I was like, are they going to be a little older? But no, it just seems to be a few months later. They're still at the same schools and everything.
Yep, he picks up. So Maleficent escapes, and they realize that Maleficent has learned. The big part of this plot is that Maleficent and the Overtakers have a much better knowledge now of how this DHI technology works and why these kids were able to defeat them. So now they're going to try, Maybeck, when he was caught in the coma, they call it Sleeping Beauty syndrome, or the syndrome. She's purposely throughout the book going to try to catch them in this so that she can get them out of the way. They're just permanently asleep, so that she can carry out her plans. So
and she's also created her own DHIs in the forms of different animals. And this is where the central plot point here is that Jess has gone missing, and she was duped with her own DHI.
Right, so throughout the book, what our characters are facing is trying not to fall asleep because they know they'll get caught in the syndrome. So I think it's so funny how they're all Coca-Cola's all around. They just keep buying Coca-Cola.
Loading up on Red Bulls, but not really the equivalent for middle schoolers.
So they're just we gotta stay caffeinated and sugared so that they stay awake. But then also, whenever they encounter a villain, they don't know if it's real or if it's a DHI until they throw something at it or try to hit it, and then they can't. But then do you really want to take the risk of getting that close to find out? So that's very interesting. And this whole thing takes place in a day.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me. And we also get to a new park. So in the quest to find Jess or Jez, we learn a little more about Amanda, and we make our way to Animal Kingdom. Do you want to talk about a little more of their background?
So Finn finally gets some more info because he goes to try to get Amanda. They decide that they need to start early in the morning since they know they only have one day if they get caught sleeping. So he goes to Amanda's at like 1 o'clock in the morning to get her to go to Animal Kingdom. And he's trying to be all sneaky like we would with our parents, like, you know, throw a stone at the window kind of a thing, because he doesn't want to go through the front door and wake everyone up. But then she like comes to Linda and she's like, you can go through the front door. And like she's talking not in a whisper. And then it kind of comes out that she and Jez live by themselves in this abandoned house in the middle, like on the edge of a field. And he's really confused, and finally he's like, you know, I thought we were friends, you can trust me. And it turns out there are these things called fairlies, not fairies, fairlies, because they are, quote, fairly human, I think is what she called it.
It made me think of the X-Men. Like, these are teens with special abilities, but we don't fully understand our powers. And I was like, this is X-Men.
And they're all orphans.
Yes.
Their powers only come because it's kind of like a fight or flight thing when you have to be on your own for survival. So we find out that they have these special abilities, and that's why Maleficent wants Jez. Jez dreams the future. Jez sees things. This kind of reminded me of like Alice from Twilight, where it's not like complete futures, it's images.
So she's sketched them in her diary, and those are the clues that are left behind to help them track her down.
Right. So Maleficent wants Jez because she doesn't want Jez to be able to inform other people of their plan. So that's why Maleficent keeps trying to find her, and Jez is kidnapped. And the whole plot of the book is trying to find Jez while not falling asleep and digesting her clues as we run around Disney's Animal Kingdom.
Yes. So Wayne comes back into the picture to help them, but he doesn't get to meet them in person. They kind of have to meet online in order to find him, but he becomes essential to like understanding the maintenance portion and trying to find this second server that they believe is in Animal Kingdom, which is controlling the fake DHIs, but also, you know, their own technology as well, and what happened to Jez.
What do you think of Wayne?
I like him. I see a lot of some of the Imagineers that we've heard of in the past. Like, definitely a man of Walt's time, a little bit old school, but just fun-loving.
I'm a little suspicious of Wayne.
Really?
Yes, just because he does talk in circles.
Mm-hmm.
And every time the kids ask him a question, he's like, you don't need to know that right now. Or he, like, all in good time. Like, he dances around some things. And he's extremely helpful, but I feel like there's more than what he's telling us. And I don't know if it's like a good thing or a bad thing.
I was say, like, how are you taking that? Because I like him. I'm like, oh, like,
I do too. Like, right now, I like him.
Grandpa.
But I feel like there's more than what he's telling the kids. And I feel like it's going to be one of those, kind of like in Harry Potter, that, like, when Harry finds out things too late, it's like that information would have been useful like 2 books ago.
That's fair.
So I feel like it's going to be one of those moments where, like, he thinks
he's like either Dumbledore. You're like, come on. You could
have
told me.
Like, he's not a bad guy, but, like, he could have done... I feel like there's just something that he could have... He's not telling us everything.
Okay.
So I feel like in a book or two, he's going to reveal something, and I feel like either Maybeck is going to be snarky and be like, dude, that would have been great, like, 6 months ago.
Well, we'll
or
see.
Something
That'll
like that.
be the fun of going through that, for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see, listeners. We'll come back. Are my suspicions going to be confirmed?
Well, in this book, we do have some new developments. This was kind of teased at the end and climax scene we described where Finn is fighting Maleficent and frees Jez. But in broad daylight during the live day with guests around, he actually starts to kind of transform and cross over into his DHI state, even though he's not asleep. And this becomes very prominent and essential in this second book.
And what do you think that does for him as a character?
I feel like it kind of shows his growth. I would align it with maybe like Luke in Star Wars learning the Force, like kind of learning to control it and growing. And I see a lot of parallels with the Force, like the light and the good side, and kind of when he starts to lose that ability is when he shows fear or anger or any kind of emotion. So he has to cross. Yes, exactly. He has to cross into.
Don't give in to the dark side.
A meditative state to reach it. What I'm very curious is if we'll start to see others be able to harness that ability, because at this point he is the only one who can do that. And I'm like, well, why can't he just teach the others? But we'll see.
Well, he tries to. I think he's still learning how to do it, so he's struggling to explain it. But I am curious too if that's going to be a big part of his character. Is he also kind of like a fairy, or is there something special in his programming that we don't know about yet that Wayne knows? I think there's a little bit more there that we're going to see in the coming books. That we know Finn is special.
He's the leader, but probably for a reason.
Right. He's an unchosen leader. He brings this up a lot, that he's like, I've not been elected, but he's noticing people just naturally follow him. So I feel like that's going to play a role as well in the coming books as he evolves as a leader. But yeah, I think this could be a bigger thing in his character.
Let's take a moment to talk about, I think, one of your favorite villains, who it's not just Maleficent anymore.
I was so excited. I love this. So we learn, I think it's back in book 1, at the end of book 1, that Maleficent kind of lets slip in her language. She says we or something, where Finn catches on and he goes, wait, you're not calling the shots here? And she tries to cover herself up a little bit. She doesn't want to say anything. But they figure out through a lot of Jezebel's clues. Jezebel leaves another anagram. So I think anagrams are going to be a thing.
Yes, I want to try to solve them ahead of them sometimes.
Right, when we have some, you just gotta close the book and figure it out. But it turns out she had something called Change Rob. Rob is her quote boyfriend. But if you turn around the letters, it's Chernabog.
Dun dun dun. And if you're not familiar, Chernabog is a little bit of a deeper cut, I'd say, in the villain's lore. He is from Fantasia, the Night on Bald Mountain scene.
So question for you, Courtney. I'm going to tap into your Disney park knowledge here. One of the things that they noticed in the parks is that the Chernabog float goes missing. He was in Spectro Magic.
Yes, he was.
So when did Spectro Magic disappear?
Ooh, I want to say around 2010. I know back and forth between Main Street Electrical Parade. Main Street Electrical Parade would come visit, then go back to California.
Okay, so we're definitely in the Spectro Magic period where...
I feel like I saw Spectro Magic maybe in 2011, but don't quote me on that, but definitely not after that. You know what? I'm going to Google it because I loved that parade so much, and I want to be...
It's my fave.
Yes, and the Chernabog float was very cool. That was also one of my favorite scenes. So it looked like a mountain, and then
the wings open up.
Yes.
And it's him. It's exactly like how it is in Night on Bald Mountain section of Fantasia.
It closed on June 4th, 2010. Hey, I was right. Sorry. That's
okay, so within the context
pride.
of...
This is 2008, that when the book was written, which I think, we're still kind of taking place in 2005 a little bit. I don't know. It only jumps a few months, but there are some things that are relevant to 2008.
But definitely when these books are taking place, Chernabog has a much more prominent role in the parks than what it does today. So he's in that parade, because now you only see him in Fantasmic as a water screen. All right. So that's where Chernabog comes from, and he is known as the biggest, baddest, most evil villain, which kind of fits. I mean, he's supposed to essentially be Satan.
It's just interesting to me, though, that he's not as well known, so to put all that power, but absolutely you're right, in that Fantasia sequence he is very strong and head of the underworld, but not Hades.
And I love that Ridley did that, though, because overall I think these books are a great reintroduction into Disney for this age group, because they start to understand things more. You can now explain what an Imagineer is in a fun way, and they know, oh, Imagineers do this in Walt Disney World. And you can pull some of these other maybe more deep cut characters, and they might be like, hey, I want to watch this movie. And Fantasia is one that it's harder to watch when you're younger. You appreciate it a little bit more as you get older. So I like how Ridley Pearson has kind of set up these books that they're fun and they are fictional, but they also reintroduce Walt Disney World to this age group in a way that they probably haven't.
Yeah, I
thought
can
about
see
before.
it encouraging them to like seek out other materials as we encourage our readers and our listeners to do. So what do you think Chernobog wants to do? Like, we really only see him in like the last, like very last portion of the book. So I think we're going to see more of him.
Oh, for sure. Because he gets away. So it turns out that Chernobog's been using bats around Animal Kingdom to be like his spies, to report to him like where the kids are and what they're doing, because he is actually hiding in Everest, which makes sense. He is part of a mountain in Night on Bald Mountain, so he's hiding there. Was he the Yeti?
That's what I read it as. Like, the Yeti
That's
was
what I
the
took it as,
animatronic, and he was like hidden in there, and then kind of
because
like,
they notice that when the animatronic is turned on and comes to life, he snatches Finn, and while Finn's in his hand, he like
transforms
into Chernobog. And I was just like, oh my god, the Disco Yeti is turned off because Joe Rohde knows that Chernobog is hiding in there, and that's why he's not on.
We can never fix it.
You can't fix it because it'll be the end of the world.
That's too funny. I don't think... Well, yeah, the Disco Yeti was around in 2008 and continues to live on, so... They don't really address the fact that it doesn't move as you ride, but I think that's a nice way to interpret it. They end up, though, having to give up something very important to them. In that scene, they trade the Stonecutter's quill, Walt's magic pen, to save Amanda and Jez. So now they're left another cliffhanger with, you know, like, what's going to happen next.
You know, that's actually, it was a really cool fight scene.
Yeah.
Because we learned that Amanda's powers as she has lots of interesting powers. She can levitate herself. She can make other things levitate. Yes, she moves things, so she has a little bit of telepathy, but she also like can absorb the fireballs from Maleficent, so she's very interesting. But in that exchange, she kind of gets trapped, and Maleficent and Chernobog won't let her go unless they get the pen. So our characters make the bold and noble decision to trade the pen, and I think that's going to be... Oh, and then with that, we learned that really the big part of this was not capturing the kids, but capturing Wayne. So now Wayne is missing. That was a nice twist that came towards the end when the kids realized that this is not about them. This is about drawing Wayne out.
Yeah. So that's, I think we're setting us up for the next book. But what did you think about these first two?
You know, it was really cool. I didn't really know what to expect coming into this. But like I was saying, I kind of got ahead of myself. I really like how this introduces the Walt Disney World parks in a different way about how Imagineers and how cast members work and how they're integral to the park, and that there's a lot more going on than you realize just on stage. So I really like how these books introduce those true elements, but then also give us some new fantasy, a new way to think about the parks at the same time. And I really like these characters. Particularly book 2, we get chapters in different perspectives.
Yes.
So I think he did a good job of laying out, like, knowing what we need to know from Finn, but then also getting to learn who these other characters are as we move forward. I'm kind of thinking of this like Harry Potter-ish. Not like with the plot, but like how the books are laid out, where you really need book 1 to get the groundwork. Book 2, you learn more about your characters and you get a little bit more of a bigger picture. And then like 3 and 4 is probably where we're going to see a lot of our struggle building, and then like 5 and 6 leading into the culmination. So like I see kind of that pattern. Yeah, also 7 books. But I really enjoyed them.
Yeah,
they were
me
fun.
too. I really, these are longer for a middle grade read. The first one is about 325 pages. The second about 360, but they get up to 600 pages in the 7th. But it really is so easy to read because the chapters are very short. Like there's 60 chapters in the second book.
But there are like 4 pages each.
Which I appreciated because I found like it was easy for me to find stopping places. Like, okay, I'm reading for 45 minutes at lunch. And I'm like, oh, this is only 3 pages. I can finish up this chapter. And then be like, oh, this one's only 4 pages. So I'd end up like reading 3 more chapters. Quote.
But in the second book, what was cool was using that as well as the changing perspectives, is that you were left on cliffhangers all the time. So you'd end this chapter and Finn's trapped between tigers, but then you're back with Willow and Philby, and then you're like, wait, but what's happening to Finn? And then you'll wrap up Willow and Philby who are trying to crash a server, and you're like, wait, now we're back with Finn, but what's happening to Willow and Philby? So he did a great job of using that format to also direct your attention, but also create suspense.
Absolutely.
So why do you think this series is great for middle school age, preteens, young adults?
I'd say one, the readability, but definitely I read it as a middle schooler, so I liked reading originally, not the second book. But
we are at heart.
Okay. We are. I think just, seeing yourself in those characters, like I said before, he has a diverse range in terms of like what they look like, what their personalities are. It is nice to see yourself in characters. I think that's important for kids, and I think he accurately captures the middle school experience. Like, as an adult, I kind of like rolled my eyes sometimes with like the boys versus girls type thing, but absolutely at that age you're like, ooh, can I have these feelings?
But then also some of the interactions like with their parents, that you're at that age where you're starting to get a lot more freedom, so the parents are like, yes, you can go to the parks with your friends by yourself, but then they're like, hey, you haven't checked in a while, and these kids learning how, like, you should not lie to your parents. I am not saying lie to your parents, but I feel like we've all gone through that phase where, like, you now have secrets at this age.
They get grounded. So, very real.
And when you have secrets or things that, like, you don't know how to explain to your parents, thinking about how do I then explain this to my parents?
Yeah.
So I think we've all gone through, or at least in that age, that's a more pertinent thing where, like, you don't want to tell your parents everything because you have weird feelings or you're experiencing new things that you don't want to necessarily tell them. So then how do you kind of go around it? So I think we can all relate to that also.
What I'd love to know, you didn't read this as a middle schooler, but you did read this as a former cast member and college program participant. How did you feel like having a little bit of that backstage perspective going into this?
I had some mixed emotions.
Okay.
It was cool because it brought back some memories. Like when he was describing the utilidors, I know exactly what that is because even though I was, quote, what's called global, that I worked in every park, I did work the most in Magic Kingdom. So I know those utilidors.
Yeah.
And I could see those places. But then I also had some issues with, I don't know, balancing accuracy because I want it to be accurate. I think the backstage, I think you can't appreciate Disney for what it is until you understand all the integral roles of, yes, it's magic, but it's because people have that magic and we make that happen.
We create happiness.
We do create happiness. That is the mission statement of cast members, if you didn't know. So I think it's so cool that this is the age group that you start introducing backstage stuff. But there were some inaccuracies. But I'm also curious if he did that on purpose so that it's not giving everything away. Like, for instance, when he talked about costuming, as a entertainment member, I spent a lot of time in costuming, and how he approached, like, how you got costumes and checked them out and where they were was not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But granted, maybe when he was writing these, and by the time I got there in 2015, maybe it's changed. They are a decade apart. But like some of that, or how particular people in entertainment were behaving in the utilidors, I know was a big no-no. They would never act in those certain ways in the book. So that was a little like, for me, but I think it also worked for the plot, though, so I understand where some of these inaccuracies might come in.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I'm going to talk about this very carefully, I get that it's for middle schoolers, and, like, you reach certain age where you come to different realizations, but I was kind of surprised, given that this is a book published by Disney, sold in the Disney parks. All I'm going to phrase it as is character integrity.
Yeah, that's what I was dancing around with. Yeah,
we don't need to go too far because, all opinions are my own and do not represent the Walt Disney Company, but I like to keep some things in check. I was surprised at how some things were written about, and I was like, oh, we're just gonna say that that's a thing. But I guess that's keeping his audience in mind. So I'm assuming he got some kind of approval from Disney to allow that.
Yeah, if it's from Disney Publishing, obviously someone cleared this.
Yes.
But it was cool that there are cast members. I thought it was funny that as these kids, at times they dress as cast members.
Yeah.
That I was like, would you really think a 13-year-old is believably a cast member? But it was also kind of funny and entertaining. I looked like a 13-year-old at 21 or 22 years old. So maybe we have baby faces. But yes, I wondered, I was like, how passable is But
this?
also, like, there's that moment where, like, Maybeck is supposed to be dressed like in Adventureland, but kind of themed to Aladdin. And all these kids are like, oh, look, it's Aladdin. They start running up to him for autographs. I was like, would he believably
pass? Like,
he's not in Aladdin's outfit. He's just in a other outfit.
Right.
And also, like, he's also 14. Like, would you reasonably believe that, although he's described to be looking older and more mature than his friends, but, like, there are moments where, like, they're just wandering around the park. Like, they're like, act like you work here. But they do address that in the second book.
Yeah, that definitely
a lot better. That they're like, hey, guys, we look younger, so we need to, like, really try to, you know, blend in as much as we can, like, stay in groups of other people. So I think after the first book, I felt a little more, like, about it. But the second book, when they address, like, we know we don't look like cast members, I was like, there we go. So I was like, yeah, Disney doesn't hire under 16.
It'll be fun for me reading the other books because I only worked at Magic Kingdom. So book 1, I was like, yes, that's there. And, oh, yeah, I remember that. But then I don't really have experience backstage at Animal Kingdom. So it's more fun to see that side, I think, moving forward in parks that I didn't have an opportunity to be backstage as much.
Courtney, I know you've been waiting.
I've kept it.
Because as you and I were texting back and forth as we're reading these, and you were so excited. So these books, because they are a little bit further, we're reading these more in the future from when they were written. There is a lot of nostalgia here for us because this is our prime time of going to the parks. And I'm going to let you give your 10-minute go.
I'm not doing 10 minutes because we're already getting long.
If you wanted to.
So I will just say, if the acronym VMK, Virtual Magic Kingdom, means anything to you, please reach out to me on social media and we will discuss it at length, because I recently discovered one of my coworkers also played VMK and we had a fun nostalgia trip. I will not wax poetic for 10 minutes, but VMK was a game that was created in 2005, which is when this book came out, and was interestingly closed in 2008, which is when the second book comes out. And it was an online multiplayer game that blended different elements from the Magic Kingdom park. So we're talking Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Disneyland Paris, into like an online place to play. You could collect different pins, costumes, chat. It was a limited dictionary because it is supposed to be for kids, so you can't say anything inappropriate. If you're a little younger, I'd say it's pretty similar to maybe like Club Penguin, I guess, from what I've seen.
That was the vibe that I was getting.
Yeah, but it was all Disney themed. There were tie-ins to the park. Like when I went to Walt Disney World in 2006, I did an in-park quest and like got items that were exclusive to Walt Disney World that I could then have in the game, and I just really loved this game, so please feel free to message me about it. But it plays a part because it's in 2005. I feel like Ripley got a preview of the game because some of the things that he described weren't actually functions in the game, but I got that they served their purpose for this. I think this is actually how I found Kingdom Keepers, because I was such a huge VMK nerd that I was on like virtual Magic Kingdom forums where you could chat about the game, and someone was like, oh, there's this book and VMK's in it, and I was like that obsessed, and that's how I read this book, because I was like, ooh, it talks about it. But I did find it very interesting that in 2008 the game closed, like upset a lot of the people. There were actually protests outside of Disneyland about this game closing.
Really?
Yes, it was a thing. So by the time he writes the second book, that game has closed. So in a way, he addresses that, and I absolutely love that it kind of becomes like, oh, we had to shut it down because it was being taken by the Overtakers. Because like we as fans never really got an answer as to why, other than like, this was a limited time promotion for Disneyland's 50th happiest celebration on Earth that ran 3 years or so. Like they just said it was ending its time. So I liked that he incorporated that. So I feel like Ripley was a fan. Maybe his kids, which he's referenced in his acknowledgments and dedications, maybe they were fans of the game and he knew what it felt like to lose that game.
Yeah, and VMK is a big part of this book. These kids go into it a lot, and this is like their secure chat rooms. But like you said, I like how in the second book, I didn't realize that it had closed. I was not a VMK player, and I don't know how. I don't know how this bypassed me completely. Like, I was reading VMK and thought it was completely made up for this book. I did not know it was a real thing until I texted you about it, and you were like, Emily,
this was my life in 2005 and 2006.
So I'm sorry I live under a rock. As someone who claims to be a Disney and Disney Parks fan, I totally dropped the ball on this one in my childhood.
Loved it.
But yeah, it's a big piece, and it turns out that VMK now in the book is like where the Imagineers used to remotely control things around the park. And that's like a big part of Philby's role in the second book. So yeah, that was a really cool twist. I didn't realize that was at the same time, so it's crazy how the Ridley was on top of this.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too in terms of the technology, because I feel like, again, what I was trying to get to earlier was the first one is in 2005 and only a few months have passed, but I feel like he's addressing very 2008 things. Like, one of the things in the second book that they use to communicate is a Nintendo DS, and I feel like that was big around 2008, like with the Wi-Fi and the chat features, and of course Blackberries. Like, there's been no mention of an iPhone, but I wonder if by the time we get to the later books, as that becomes like the most popular technology, if they'll have iPhones.
Hearing the BlackBerry thing made me laugh so much, because I remember when that was cool. Like, you wanted the BlackBerry because it was the only phone that had internet, but also had the full keyboard. So it was like cool to have a BlackBerry. But now, like, it's not even a thing anymore, is it? Or government uses them, and that's about it.
I feel like the first iPhone came out in 2007. So like when he was writing this, it had not reached like its share of the market. So my thought is they're going to have iPhones in a bit.
Yeah, so the technology was kind of fun. So that nostalgia. I never had a Nintendo DS. I never graduated from the straight up Game Boy. But I think Nintendo's DS are still a thing, because I still see students in my high school that use them.
And I feel like the Switch has kind of has that portability factor. Definitely Nintendo gaming has evolved, but I definitely remember the DS. But like, I was using it as a high schooler. I loved me some Nintendogs.
But then going back to some Disney Park specific nostalgia, MGM Studios, Sorcerer's Hat. He goes into the Great Movie Ride at one point, and I'm just like, rip my heart out.
He does specifically. What's interesting, in book one, it's referred to as MGM because that's where the sound stage is, where they recorded the DHIs, and it's a functioning studio. And then it's very, like, kind of almost passed over, but in book two, it's just referred to as Disney Hollywood Studios, which is the year 2008 when that change occurred, but it's not really addressed.
But it's not 2008 in the book.
And what I'm
so it should have still been Studios,
almost
or MGM.
Surprised by is you and I are reading the more recent edition of this book, like in terms of the cover. It's different.
And the printing.
Yes, exactly. It's like a second or third printing versus the one that I read in 2005. So I was kind of curious. I was like, oh, like, I'm surprised they didn't just go back and change MGM, like do a control F and replace MGM.
Because I am curious
studios.
with the second book, because even the second book is copyright published 2008 when there was the name change. In the book, it's still 2005, 2006.
Right.
Maybe. So I'm curious if there were some copyright issues that because Disney doesn't own the rights anymore to MGM, like he couldn't even use it.
Yeah, that's
even
fair.
if it is inaccurate for his timeline, if he would even be allowed to print or use it at the time.
And there's also, I like sometimes forget about Camp Minnie Mickey now that Pandora is a thing. I was like, oh yeah, Camp Minnie Mickey, that was there. And like that's where in the second book they talk about the DVC kiosk, and so they're just like logging onto the computer there, and I was like, ooh, feels going back.
So listeners who maybe have never experienced Camp Minnie Mickey, or if it's been a while, that is now where Pandora is where Camp Minnie Mickey was, and Festival of the Lion King used to be the big attraction, I believe, in Camp Minnie Mickey, and it was mostly just like play area, right?
There was a Pocahontas show for a while, and that's where you would meet Minnie and Mickey, and they were in their adventure
before Adventure
gear.
Outpost.
Yep. So Adventure Outpost was essentially what replaced that, but it was
right. There were no rides, though.
No?
There was no like big attractions. It was shows and set scenery kind of things. It was a small walkthrough area.
Those were the big things that jumped out to me as nostalgia. But I'm sure we will continue to see it as we move through. I think it'll be really fun for me when we get to 2014 because I'm like, and I'm here.
Yeah. So overall, Courtney, any last thoughts on these two books?
I loved it, and I'm looking forward to where this journey takes us. I'm glad we're taking the time to do it. I have some resources. I'm hoping we won't repeat ourselves too much, and I'll challenge myself to think of new ones for the other books. But for this one, what immediately came to mind was the Keys to the Kingdom tour, which we might have mentioned in the past. It's one of the tours available for additional purchase at Walt Disney World, and it takes you into the Utilidor. And I'm assuming that Ridley went on a very similar type of tour to get some of his information, but it is accessible to guests ages 16 and up. And that really gives you a nice backstage glimpse at some of the things that are referenced. If you're a teacher of middle schoolers or have like a group and a camp, my friend Kathleen was kind enough to tell me as I was telling her that I was reading this book that the Disney youth programs, which is when you can, I guess, host a camp or your school or like a spring break type thing, they have a Kingdom Keepers themed program. I know there's a program that would go to Space Mountain and see it in the morning, kind of like learning about engineering. But the description of this one, which is still on the site, says, save Magic Kingdom Park from the villainous Overtakers by solving clues during this interactive self-guided tour based on the popular Kingdom Keepers book series for groups of 10 or more. So Emily, you and I need to find 10 elementary, middle, junior, high students and go do this because it sounds really fun.
Okay, we'll do that through our friends who are teachers.
Yes.
Not just taking random children off the street.
No, we can't do that. I want to keep my job.
So do I. But I do have a lot of friends that teach the elementary and middle school level. That'd be really cool.
If they go on a
it sounds like such a fun tour.
Disney, I'm coming with you. It does. It's really
I wish that was open to more families. I would totally be for understanding age restriction because the other tours, backstage tours, do have age restrictions, 16 and up. That it would be cool to have one that was open to public. Like, hey, you can do this one with your kids if you want to do one at 10 years old. But some resources I have, watching wise, Modern Marvels from the History Channel. I miss these a lot. They had one called Modern Marvels, Walt Disney World. And it would take you behind a lot of how Walt Disney World was built, the engineering, and they have pieces about the Utilidors and the castle, but then also Animal Kingdom and the Tree of Life and how Animal Kingdom is set up. So if you're more interested in how those parks were built and why they were built the way they were built, that is a great resource. There was also a Discovery Channel had one you said on Everest. I think we watched that. Most of these are available on YouTube now because I don't really see them anymore on History Channel once they've kind of changed their programming. And then another one that I have is very popular, and actually I've never done this in the parks, but the Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom game is kind of that similar stop the villains from overtaking the Magic Kingdom, but I've never played it.
I just played it recently, back in August. Doug and I did a day where we're going to do everything at Magic Kingdom, and so we just played one round, but I'd like to go back and play more. But you're absolutely right. It is about stopping the villains from overtaking Magic Kingdom. That was a great one. So we'll play together next time you come visit Orlando.
Yeah, it's on my list that, on a trip where maybe I'm not only there for 2 or 3 days.
Yes, I can understand how it becomes
that I can take a good solid 2 hours just around Magic Kingdom to play because it looks a lot of fun and people are really into the card collecting.
Well, next up we have Kingdom Keepers books 3 and 4. We'll save you the description because I think that'll fit well to read as we did this time. Easing into it, but we're looking to get that to you in July if you are following along with us. And if you are, we would love to hear from you, kind of how you've enjoyed maybe this episode, the books, or as I said, hit me up about VMK. You can follow us for Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse, or email with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please leave us a review on iTunes so others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. If you want to follow me, Courtney, and message me about BMK, I'm on Instagram at GreatGuthsby and on Twitter at Courtney_Guth.
And you can follow me, Emily, at Instagram and on Twitter at Emily_McD. We would definitely love to hear from you. And if you have questions that you want to hear from us, things that you thought about while you're reading, please let us know and we will add them into our show.
Yay! Well, why don't you take us out with some wise words from Wayne in book 1?
So Wayne, our Imagineer, he says, there is a fine line between imagination and reality. An inventor dreams something up, and pretty soon it's there on the table before him. A science fiction writer envisions another world, and then some space probe finds it. If you believe in something strongly enough, I think you can make it happen.
Well, we've made this podcast happen, so I love the inspiration of that, and I hope our listeners find that inspiring as well to make their own dreams happen. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you soon. Join us on the next part of the adventure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.